Hello, detectives. Today we are going to continue along our reading for The Missing Manatee with Chapter 5. Just a reminder before we get started, please have your detective notebook or a piece of paper out. That way you can jot down some ideas, maybe some questions that you might have, okay? Some things that need to be solved. We're going to be doing this for the rest of the year. It's nice and handy to maybe even mark it off as your missing manatee section. Okay, so grab that notebook so you're ready to write down some clues. Remember, here are the elements of mystery: detective, victim, suspects, witnesses, alibi, red herring, evidence, crime, and clues. These elements of mystery might not always be a part of each and every chapter, but we will talk about the different chapters that reveal the detective or a victim or witnesses or even our suspect. All right, guys, so before we go into our reading, we're going to do a little bit of a vocabulary time. So the first word we're going to discuss is pet peeve. And a pet peeve is something that a particular person finds especially annoying. Okay, so it says particular person. That means maybe a couple people, maybe not all people. So one thing that people might find annoying is when people chew loud. Okay, they don't close their mouth and chew right. So maybe you're reading a book and you have this person going nom 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 nom, and even though your cute little panda is still hum nom nom nom, okay, it's still a lot of noise. So it might be a pet peeve to somebody, that little chompiness. Another thing that a pet peeve somebody might have is somebody picking their nose. And you would think most people would have this pet peeves, but some people aren't bothered by a picking nose. But just different things that people do. A pet peeve is what somebody might find annoying, okay? It might not be everybody, but some people. The next vocabulary word we're going to go over is mouth of the river. Okay, and the mouth of the river is the place a river enters a lake, larger river, a gulf, or an ocean, okay? So for instance, right here, as we have the river here, the water would flow down, okay, bloop, 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 bloop. And then right here with the mouth of the river, that's where it would connect to a larger part of the river. And in our text that we're going to read today, I'm going to skip ahead to help you out. He doesn't say mouth of the river. I'm going to read you what he does say, and that way you can go, okay, I know what he's talking about. He's talking to his mom right now, and he says, I said, I'll just be in the river today, no farther than the mouth. Okay, so he's telling his mom, hey, Mom, don't worry, I'm just going to be in the river. I'm not going to go any farther in the mouth and get into the Gulf. Okay, so just to clarify that so you understand what it means, mouth of the river. Next vocabulary words I want to go over is Smith & Wesson, okay? And yes, this is mentioning a gun company, okay? It is an American manufacturer of firearms, ammunition, and restraints, okay? Founded back in 1856, so it's been around for a while. But our poor victim was a manatee that got shot, so there is going to be some mention of it. However, Miss Garvin is not going to be showing you pictures of guns because that's not what I do. I'm not a gun person. So I'm just going to talk about the company and why we need to mention it. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're going to see a decal of Smith & Wesson on a pickup truck, okay, in this chapter. And that leads us to suspect a character because, hey, he has a love for guns and something happened to a manatee. So we got to connect those things. And that's what you should be thinking about as we're reading, connecting those dots. Another thing is this character has a gun rack in the back of their pickup truck. Okay, and a gun rack is a rack that is mounted in a vehicle and can carry one or more guns safely and securely. Now, typically gun racks are used to hold guns that you can hunt, okay, which I also do not do. But just so you can understand, this is why our main character, Ski, is suspecting this character. There's another reason he suspects them. He suspects this character, this macho man, because they don't really, either they don't recognize him or they don't really know much about him, okay? So it's kind of a suspicious character. And then right here I wanted to point out the blue plastic gun, or, to show you what it looks like, is up there in the, the rack. But I just wanted to show you what it looked like. So typically they can look all different ways, but this is typically what a gun rack would look like. And that's what they would set it up as. Then the next part I want to talk about is a formula that we might be using for the next few chapters. It depends on when our different suspects pop up. And I want you to get kind of used to this and not be confused. So hopefully I can explain this right now and not confuse you. So we have a formula that's called MOM, okay? M-O-M. And if you use the first letters of each of these words, means, opportunity, and motive, they spell out the word mom, okay? So if I will just draw to help you out there in case you're not visualizing it. M-O-M, okay? So these three different words spell out the word mom, okay? And we learn about this on page 57. It says, when it came to solving a crime, the police used a formula called MOM, okay, which means. The first part is their method, okay? So when you're using this formula to decide if a suspect is, committed the crime, think about their method, okay? Did they have the tools? Well, let's talk about the Smith & Wesson guy. He has a gun, or he has access to a gun, okay, which is in relation to what happened to the Manatee. And then we talk about some other stuff, like is there other evidence? Right now we don't have any other evidence. We may find some more later on. But the other one is opportunity, okay? And opportunity could be time, location, and when we think about location, we're on the water. Well, what do you need for that location? You need a boat, okay? So did he have the opportunity? Anybody could rent a boat. Okay, ooh, so we just said, you know what, anybody kind of has the opportunity. Somebody who can rent a boat, they had that opportunity. People around here did every day, okay, and that leaves motive, okay, and Skeet at this point does not know if this macho man, this new guy, has a motive. But we do know a character that has a motive, and that character is Dirty Dan right now. Dirty Dan's only motive though, is that he thinks of manatees as speed bumps, okay? And it's more like maybe he was being sarcastic, or maybe he was just like, I care about my fish and I don't care about anybody else. So maybe he's not being mean or evil towards them, but he also doesn't care about them. And that's one thing that kind of draws up a red flag, like, hey, Dirty Dan might have a motive. Okay, so at the end of this, I hope you write some of this down now. If you need to rewind, do what you gotta do. If you need to copy those words, you are going to have to write a sentence about means, opportunity, and motive. Now, luckily, you're only writing a sentence about what they mean, okay? So in your head, explain to me in a sentence what the means in the formula. And I know that sounds funny, means, but explain in your head, or actually I can kind of give you an example. So for example, for means, it would be the method or tool that your suspect uses. And if you were going to talk about, the fact that he had access to a gun or whatever, that would be the means, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if you're not really sure what I mean, then I will reiterate at the end of this video. I'll tell you again, but just keep this in mind. We're looking for the MOM, okay? The means, the opportunity, and the motive. Hopefully I cleared that up for you. We're literally just trying to break it down, okay? So that you can find out who that suspect is. All right, we are ready to begin, and that way you can understand exactly what I'm going over. Hopefully this vocabulary helped you out a little bit, and you're gonna enjoy this chapter. Have fun, guys. All right, guys, before we start chapter 5, let's go over a little bit of what happened in chapter 4. With chapter 4, we start off with Meemaw, Skeeter's grandma. She was getting ready for the karaoke singing contest at the River Haven Grill, okay? Then the three of them went off to Riverhaven Grill, and that's where Skeet saw his dad. Okay, so his dad, who is Mac. And then we also are reintroduced to kind of like in a different setting. Mac, Dirty Dan, and Earl, which is Deputy Earl. And they get to talk to them about, the missing manatee. And we then find out that Dirty Dan is going to invite Skeet to go tarpon fishing with Skeet. And it's kind of like weird because we're not sure how we feel about Dirty Dan yet. Like, is he a nice guy that's misunderstood, or is there something, suspicious about him, something weird? And then the last part, well, one of the last parts, Meemaw won the contest. Okay, these boots are made for walking. And then Skeet's mom agrees to let Skeet go tarpon fishing with Dirty Dan. So that's the recap for this. We're going to jump into chapter 5 right now.
Chapter 5. I had a hard time getting to sleep that night with my mind flying back and forth between Mom and Mac, the prospect of fishing with Dan, and the dead manatee. I kept trying to figure out who the killer might be and what he looked like and how the whole thing had happened and why. Then I'd picture a scene in which I had a huge tarpon on the line. Sometimes I landed it, sometimes I did something wrong and it got away. When I finally got to sleep, I had some very weird dreams. The Manatee Killer appeared. As I fought him, he turned into a giant hammerhead. Shark, laughing at me, his big mouth open to show rows of sharp teeth. The shark turned into my English teacher, Mr. Giordano, who had given us a writing assignment to do during our break. We'd all grown, and he had tried to make it better by saying, "It only has to be a first draft, and I think you're going to like this one. I want you to write about a pet peeve." My buddy Lenny had raised his hand and said, "How about if your pet peeve is having to do writing assignments over vacation?" All the kids had laughed. Mr. Giordano had just smiled and said, "Fine, then write about it, but let me feel the passion in your words." I'd forgotten about the assignment, but I guess my dream brain hadn't. I had a very passionate nightmare about staring at a blank sheet of paper for hours with no clue what to say. Then I dreamed I was outside Mom's bedroom hearing those words, "I don't want you to come back, not now, not ever." I was relieved when Meemaw knocked on my door in the morning, calling, "Rise and shine." "Come on in," I croaked. She peered in, her eyes bright and wide awake. "Come on and get up, Skeeter," she said. "I'm real hungry after last night's excitement. We're going to Sunday brunch at Fat Boy's to celebrate my treat." I knew there was no point in getting between Meemaw and a meal at Fat Boy's barbecue, so I dragged myself out of bed, brushed my teeth, and got dressed in a groggy daze. I sat in the back seat on the way to the restaurant and dozed until we got there. Once we were seated in our booth, it was plain that while Meemaw was still fired up over her karaoke triumph, Mom was in a very different mood. She looked around the room, sighed, and said gloomily, "I'd like to pack up and move far away from here." That woke me up. I didn't like the sound of it at all. I didn't want to move anywhere. I liked it fine where we were. Mom was too busy being bummed out to notice my distress. And I think, where would I go at this point in my life? She went on. Where else could I go where I'd be the best-looking woman in town simply because I have all my teeth and weigh less than 200 pounds? Sunday is all-you-can-eat day at Fat Boy's, and there were a lot of folks taking what you might call full advantage of the offer. As I looked around the place, I thought Mom might have a point, but Meemaw wasn't having any of it. "I live in this town, and I'll have you know I weigh the same as the day I was married," she said haughtily. She reached up to pat her hair. It was the same blonde color it was when she got married, too, thanks to the smelly foam she put on it every month. I smiled, noticing that Meemaw didn't say anything about having all her teeth. I'd seen what she called her partial in a glass by her bed plenty of times. "And anyway," Mom said, "who cares what I look like? The only eligible bachelors around here are fishing guides, and I made that mistake once already." "Oh, Oh boy, I hope she wouldn't get going on that subject. I never knew what to do when she started. I didn't want to argue with her, but at the same time, I always felt as though I should defend Mac. Besides, what was she doing talking about eligible bachelors? Luckily, Meemaw spoke before Mom could get up a head of steam. Well, I don't worry about such things myself, she said, picking up her menu and studying it with a hungry eye. That's fine for you, Mom pointed out. You're not looking for a husband. Who says I'm not? Meemaw asked indignantly, giving me a sly wink. There were a number of gentlemen last evening who seemed interested in the position, if I do say so myself. But I was still trying to take in what Mom had said. Are you? I asked her, and I was embarrassed to hear my voice come out kind of squeaky. Looking for a husband, I mean? She blushed as if just realizing what she'd said. Oh, Skeet, no, not really, but, well, your father and I know, I interrupted. You kicked him out for good. I was surprised and a little scared by how angry I sounded. Mom looked surprised too, then her face darkened. Has he been talking to you about this? Because he promised me, I interrupted again. No, it wasn't him. It was you on the phone yesterday morning. Her face looked crumply for a minute. Then she straightened up and brushed the hair away from her forehead. I'm sorry you heard that, Skeeter. Your father and I intended to talk to you about this together, and we will, honey. Don't you worry about it right now, okay? It was a ridiculous thing to say, and I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? Sure, Mom, okay. I won't worry about a thing. As for that business about looking for a husband, she went on. Well, I was only talking, honey. I'm sorry. Don't pay any attention to me. We're not, Meemaw said firmly. You can sit there in a blue funk if you want to, but Skeet and I are here to celebrate. Right, Skeeter? Right, I mumbled, opening my menu and burying my face in it. We were quiet until the waitress came to take our order. After she left, there was another long, uneasy silence until finally Meemaw said, I declare, if I'd known you were going to be such party poopers, I'd have come by myself. I'd be better off trying to celebrate with that napkin holder than with you two sad sacks. Maybe I'll just move over to the next table and see if those nice folks would like to hear about my karaoke machine. Mom sighed deeply and gazed into space. But I felt bad for Meemaw. I was trying to think of something to liven up the party when I remembered I hadn't told Mom and Meemaw about the manatee, what with the karaoke contest and all. So while we waited for our food to come, I did, leaving out the part about the radio being busted. Luckily, Mom didn't think to ask why I hadn't called for help. She and Meemaw were both real interested and asked all kinds of questions, most of which I didn't know the answers to, such as what was going to happen next. And the one everyone seemed to ask, what kind of awful person would do such a thing? Meemaw was especially outraged. I swear, she said, if that isn't the flat-out meanest thing I can think of. Her blue eyes flashed. I had to smile, thinking I wouldn't want to be the killer if Meemaw ever discovered him, especially if she had her boots on. Anyway, after talking about the manatee, I began looking around the restaurant playing a game, checking out each man to see if he looked like the Manatee Killer type. I had the feeling that if I saw him, I'd know somehow. If you were a bad guy like that, wouldn't it show? The people at Fat Boys might have been above average in size, but they didn't appear very menacing. I started thinking about what I'd do after brunch and decided I'd go out in my skiff. I could pick up some extra money by catching bait fish and selling them to Larry, who would sell them to fishermen. I really did want to get the cash I needed to get a new antenna for my radio. The sooner the better. Mom, can I? She shot me a look. Mom was determined not to have me grow up ignorant, which was what she called it when people said ain't for isn't and can when they meant may, exactly as she was determined that I have a better life than hers and Mac's. She had so many plans for me, sometimes it made me tired. She was always sending away for college brochures and reminding me I had to keep my grades up so I'd be able to get in. Then she'd say I had to do well in college, too, so I could go on to graduate school. so I'd be able to get some fancy job she dreamed of for me. I'd remind her that I was only 11 years old and that my grades were good and that the job I wanted was to be a fishing guide. She'd say I was too young to know what I wanted, which really ticked me off. I didn't want a different life. I wanted our old life, the one that used to be hers and Max and Mima's and mine. I corrected myself. May I go out in the boat when we get back? She cocked her head to the side, raised her eyebrow, and asked, "You're going to leave this manatee business to the police or the wildlife people or to whoever's responsible, right?" In a way, it was kind of flattering that Mom thought I might be going out to investigate on my own. I shrugged. "It's not like I have much choice," I answered, which was true, and not true at the same time. "Well then, I don't see why you can't go," Mom said. She smiled. "You're on vacation after all." She paused, then asked, "Do you have any homework?" "Not much," I said, "just a paper for English." "Have you started it?" "No, but I still have lots of time." "Okay then, but when you go out in the boat, remember the rules." Was she kidding? I knew the rules by heart. I had to wear a life jacket whenever I was in a boat by myself and whenever any boat I was in was moving. Also, I had to tell somebody approximately where I was going, and I thought guiltily I had to have a radio or some way to call for help. Knowing the rules didn't mean I always followed them. "I will," I said. "I'll just be in the river today, no farther than the mouth." She nodded. Then she added in a warning tone, "I expect you to follow the rules when you're out with Dan on Wednesdays, too." It was the first we'd spoken about that. "I will," I repeated, "and thanks for letting me go." "Your father assured me that fishing with Dan was a good idea, Skeeter," she said. "I know how badly you want to catch a tarpon on a fly. Maybe this will get it out of your system." I doubted that, but wasn't about to say so. "I don't have to go to work until 3 on Wednesday," Mom went on, "and I plan to sleep in. I told your father that, so he knows he's in charge." "Okay," I said, although I knew Mac would be busy with his clients. The waitress came over then and asked if we were ready for seconds. "Goodness, no," said Mom. "It's all you can eat," the waitress explained patiently. "Well, I know," said Mom, "but that's all I can eat." "Me too," I said. "I'm stuffed. I'll pop right out of these jeans if I have one little bitty mouthful more," declared Meemaw. The waitress shook her head, looking real perplexed. Apparently this didn't happen very often. "You sure now?" she asked anxiously. "How about your dessert? We got key lime pie, pecan pie, black bottom pie, cheesecake." "Lord have mercy," Meemaw groaned, holding her stomach. "Stop." "Just the check, I think, please," said Mom. As we walked out to the parking lot to get into the car, a black pickup pulled in and squealed to a stop. The truck had big tires that raised it way up off the ground, and it was black with red and yellow flames painted on the side. There was a sign in the rear window saying, "This truck protected by Smith & Wesson," and a rifle hung in a gun rack behind the front seat. The driver got out. His hair was pulled back in a long blonde ponytail. He was big and strong-looking, and his tight sleeveless T-shirt showed every one of the muscles, bulgy veins, and tattoos that lined his arms. I couldn't help staring and thinking, now, this guy looks like a Manatee Killer if I ever saw one. He had "bad guy" written all over him. He took off his mirrored sunglasses and stared right back at me as we passed each other. I turned away to see Meemaw glaring at the guy with a squint-eyed, "Just what do you think you're looking at" expression. Mom said nervously, "Come on, you two." In the car, Meemaw said, "You don't know him, do you, Skeeter?" I shook my head, but he had looked oddly familiar. It took me a minute to realize he looked a little like the Manatee Killer from my dream the night before. My dream killer had also been one of those tattooed guys who go around acting tough all the time. But looking or acting like a macho dude didn't make a person a Manatee Killer, at least not in real life. I had to think more scientifically than that. I remembered something I'd seen on a cop show on TV. When it came to solving a crime, the police used a formula called MOM. It stood for means, opportunity, and motive. The criminal had to have all three. Did Macho Man have the means to be the killer? Obviously, Smith & Wesson. Did he have the opportunity? Anybody could rent a boat. People around here did it every day. That left motive, which was where I and everyone else got stumped. Why in the world would anyone want to shoot a manatee?
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed chapter 5. We're going to talk a little bit about the ending of the chapter before we jump in the jot time. So there was a new, suspect that popped up around page 56. As Skeet, his grandma, and his mom were exiting the restaurant, they see this black pickup truck, and it's kind of suspicious. And then they see this guy with a Smith & Wesson and, sticker on his car. So basically, the thing to kind of think about here is that in this town, everybody knows everybody. It's a small town. And he didn't say that flat out, but we can figure it out that nobody recognized this character, or it's not a character that he's familiar with. Okay, so it does make him suspect. So as far as jot time, let's jump into that. Jot time. What does the formula mom mean? Okay, and if you totally blanked or you were just listening and wasn't quite sure, it's back on page 57. I also go over it in our vocabulary, so if you forgot or need that help, go back to my video, and that way you can figure it out. But you're going to write down the 3 words that mean the mom formula. So M-O-M, what does that mean? The 3 words. Then we're going to talk about those different words. What does means mean? And I know that sounds funny, but what I'm asking you is, you, as a detective, when you're trying to solve this case, solving that crime, you're going to pick these 3 things. So what does means mean? What does opportunity mean? And what does motive mean? If you are drawing a complete blank, please rewind back and go to my vocabulary. I explain everything, and I tell you exactly what they mean, and you need to write a sentence for each. So please don't just say one word. Please write a sentence. One more time: means, opportunity, and motive. If I were you, I would be writing this down in your detective journal, the one that you're supposed to be writing in, because we probably will discuss this in another chapter when we look at our suspects, if they have means, opportunity, and motive. And that way we can clarify whether or not that they might have been the one that did it. All right, everybody, and with that, go ahead and head on over to forums and answer those questions. Have a good night, and see you tomorrow.